you do the work and take time to really understand yourself and your like truest desires more, the next step from that like awareness is really a process of giving yourself permission, not
Yeah.
just one time, but kind of on a regular or daily basis. Permission for yourself to matter, permission for you to, create the schedule that allows you to do what you care about and like overcoming some of the resistance that we have to that, right?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. I am delighted to have with us today Dr. Sarah Wittry. She is a hospice and palliative care physician, a mind body coach, and the podcast host of Vibrant Humans. And she'll be helping us learn how to integrate stress relieving approaches into our everyday life. And of course, as a hospice and palliative care physician, talking to somebody, this host here who loves existential quite topics. We'll be going a little bit more into living a life grounded on your core values and a meaning centered life. So, Sarah, welcome to the channel.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Jillian. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, it's been a long awaited time for me to have you here. So, I'm very appreciative.
Absolutely. I'm glad we can make it work.
Yes. And for the people who haven't yet met you, can you share a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, yeah. I've kind of lived all over the US, but currently am in Columbus, Ohio with my family. We've been here for this summer is 5 years. We're building a house, so I think that we are at least staying for the near future. And then like you said, I do palliative and hospice, palliative inpatient consults at a big hospital here in Columbus, and then inpatient hospice. And I do that clinically. I just recently cut back from full time to zero point 0.7. So it's going to open up a few days, well, like a day and a half every week, which I'm very excited about. Um, and then my family is definitely top priority there. My kids are pretty young still, so there's four of them. The oldest is 12, and then I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old little
Ooh.
sassy daughter to round
Yay.
it out. But she's so much fun. They're all so much fun. Um, and yeah, I do coaching for mostly women physicians or women in healthcare who are also either contemplating starting a family or have kids and are just sort of, you know, trying to figure out how to make it all work, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and how to, be a good doctor as well as a good mom, and just to kind of help them discover a little bit more about how to manage time, manage their energy, and sort of feel like their day to day is in alignment with kind of how what they care about and how they want to feel.
I would love to talk more about that, but first I'm curious what led to hospice and palliative care.
Oh yeah. So we did residency in PM&R, but I think that's physiatry, right? So it's more like uh, neuro and musculoskeletal, and like a lot of my colleagues, co-residents did more like sports medicine and pain management or like interventional type of stuff. But I think I always knew early on, even in college, I did um, research and work at like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital with like pediatric oncology patients. um, I've always really been drawn to like the humanity aspect of more terminal end of life care. I really appreciate the team approach to it, and how like there's emphasis not just on symptom management physically, but like on psychosocial, spiritual,
Mhm.
all of that interplaying, and you feel more equipped because you have an amazing team with you with palliative and
Yeah.
hospice. And I
Mhm.
think yeah, doing residency in PM&R, the same kind of thing with like this big team approach, I loved. But I definitely wanted to like dig in deeper on everyone. And we did actually overlap a lot with the palliative medicine team in residency. I trained at a big academic center. So it was like a lot of our family meetings involved PM&R to talk about like the functional outcomes and rehab potential and stuff, as well as palliative colleagues talk about kind of the big picture. So that's why I loved their communication. I loved their
Hmm.
ability to kind of dig in deeper with patients and their families,
Yeah.
and talk about the stuff that I found really meaningful.
I feel like it sets the example of what every layer of medicine should be.
Totally.
I found myself also really drawn to hospice and palliative care, and that was it. It was like that holistic kind of what a lot of people who go into medicine think it's going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
and spend
Mm-hmm.
time with the patients and heal holistically.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Very
Like
cool.
the things you can't control, right?
Mhm.
And how to still show up and how to still like realign and kind of crystallize the focus. I feel like is so much
Mhm.
of what we do in palliative and reframing, just because there's a lot that, is outside of our control and like our bodies. Yeah, no matter what we wish to happen, right? Like things do happen, and so we have to kind of figure out how to cope with that. So I love that aspect.
Yeah, and there's usually this catalytic event, right? The serious illness that they're facing. I'm
Mhm.
curious if you could provide the messages that you've gathered. I know there's so many, but just ones that come to mind that you learn from patients that are near the end of their life in hospice or dealing with a serious illness and navigating palliative care. What kind of lessons are these patients teaching us that
Mhm.
we wish we could have when we're well?
Right, that's a great question. I would say like the biggest themes are definitely they're like regrets of inaction, right? So
Mm.
it's like not necessarily the things that they did, but they're like, I wish I would have done that. But it's like the things that they didn't have courage to do that they always were like in their heart, in their soul, and they thought they were going to have time to do. And then just for whatever, like life happening, right? And it just kind of can go on autopilot and it can be really fulfilling, but just those things that are like under the surface, that they didn't ever get to and then at some point like don't have the chance to do. I feel like those come up a lot.
Mhm.
And so it's like just inspiring, say courage, right? Bravery and courage to sort of notice that and to like maybe do something with it, even if it's
Mm.
very small actions. I think a lot of my patients that are at the end of their life would recommend that strongly. um, and then that's a big one. uh, Relationships, right? Like just regretting not spending and investing in their relationships that matter the most to them because of any other work or business or just all sorts of things that can kind of take away attention. um, and then the last big one I'd say that comes to mind is just like there's some iteration of people talking about how they wish they allowed themselves to be happier and to worry less. Like they spend so much time trying to control things and be
Mm.
worried about things, that it was like they regret that almost when they're at the end of their life and feel looking back like, gosh, I wished I would have just like let myself have more joy, right? Like in the little things, and not spend as much of my time and my energy and my focus on, um, yeah, worrying about things, and kind of planning for the future.
I do know. Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
All those came up for me when I thought I wasn't gonna be here. I sat on what could have been my deathbed, and those things all came up for me.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Super, super common.
And when you're working with these patients, how does it either change and lead you to pause, and how has it impacted the way that you live your life?
Mm, lots of ways, but lots of like, um, I think both in short term and long term ways. In long term ways, it affords me, or sometimes even forces me, the to really be clear about where my attention is going, right? And like if I have big buckets of life and priorities that I say are my biggest priorities, like how does that play out, every quarter or so. I try to kind of like look at that big picture for myself, and then adjust as needed, right? And then in the day to day, I think it plays out mostly in like doing a lot of inner work ongoing to like coaching and other deeper work, to sort of help myself face some of like where my limiting beliefs come up, regarding what I am very passionate about and where I want to make impact, right? And I believe I have skills and experience to make impact, but like fear stands in my way, or
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
not enoughness, that sort of thing. Like I'm not the person to do that,
Yep.
I feel like it helps me to navigate that a little bit more, or be like, but it's still worth it to do. Like even with the fear, it's worth doing, because at some point I will be proud of myself for doing the things that like I say are most important to me, and like that I want to help others with.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for whoever is listening, I would invite them to pause and audit what you said was that the people they regret not doing something that they really want to do. Fear
Mhm.
holding them back. I'm
Mhm.
curious what you would say is what do you feel you might be holding yourself back from right now?
Um, well, I would say probably the biggest thing is coaching stuff,
Mhm.
right? And just as I'm trying to navigate this world of like being a clinician and always being employed, to I'm very comfortable and I think good at giving advice, or like people come to me a lot for, life
Mhm.
advice, that's not associated with a business. It's more like a friendship or a colleague. And it's like I love doing that. But I think that as I'm trying to figure out how to marry the two roles, and say, well, I want to cut back on clinical time so that I have time to do some coaching in a more formal way, right? And kind of really dig in with people over a course of weeks or months rather than one-off sessions. That fear is in me of like, I don't think I'm the right person to do this. I don't think I can get them the results they want to have. It's a lot of that fear about, what I'm capable of, I think. Yeah, for sure.
And it's interesting. What is the role of a coach?
I think a guide and a mentor more than anything, right? I think it's like someone to hold space for whoever you are speaking with. And yeah, really, really using a ton of active listening skills and powerful questions to help
Mhm.
them like bridge that gap, right? In whatever big or small way they are, whatever problem is they're struggling with in their life, or kind of a bigger picture thing, like, what am I doing? What's my purpose? That kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
It can be
Mhm.
that big, or it can be like, I can't figure out how to get meals on the table with my kids, and like I'm working and I can't do this. And like logistically, ah. So I really think it's valid to have all of those problems matter.
Mhm.
And I think that coaching is a container to provide that space to process, but also uncover kind of what's a few layers deep, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
We all have patterns that tend to present themselves over and over in different situations, that I think are unique to each of us. And I think part of life's journey is like discovering what those are for yourself, and figuring out, like, the awareness is one piece, but then figuring out like, do you want to do anything with that? Or like, you don't have to, but if you
Yeah.
want to because it's caused struggle or suffering, like, then I think that's where coaching can be really helpful too, in that deeper way. For me, that's definitely been what I've experienced.
Yeah, and just to reflect back some things that I heard, you just went down to point 7. Some physicians are going to wonder, how the heck did she do that? I want to partner with her so I can do that myself. You've got 4 children, which I know is not an easy road. How am I going to start juggling life? I heard you talk about how you're grounded on your core values. You're a hospice and palliative care physician, the physician who I'm like, gosh, they are the ones who are most able to hold space for people. What makes a good coach?
Mm,
The person that can hold space, in my opinion, that's like the one of the number one traits.
Yeah.
My gosh, Sarah is just you are it probably is so natural, right? If it doesn't come hard, I anticipate you're a darn good coach. And in case people are like, "Well, I want to test that theory," who do you coach?
Primarily physician moms right now. So just a handful of the people that fit that role. But I'm very open to, how we the saying is like we teach what we needed to know. We're kind of the version of
Exactly.
ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very open and interested in. There's also fear there, but in exploring more of helping maybe women in medicine of some sort who are struggling not just with balancing, family and work, but also like infertility challenges, because that's like my personal story is like
Yeah.
infertility, adoption, so adoptive parents or infertility, and just kind of like a non-traditional way to family, building a family, because I think it's, yeah, I could have used an immense amount of support in coaching. And so I know that
Mhm.
the need is there. And that's, what I'm interested in kind of exploring how to show up for those people and kind of, what the role of a coach what it would look like for them.
So I'm just going to vote that Sarah would be an amazing coach. You'll just have to get help her get over her limiting beliefs about the business aspects, which are so common. I totally relate. And the
Yes.
way I questioned is because I heard those limiting beliefs and it's very relatable. And I know your assets. I know you're a tremendous coach. And I hope that you embrace that. Maybe go from this discussion and be like, what was I so worried about? I'm an amazing coach. I have all those things that you just said. And the fact that you are where you are and you may feel like there's always going to be room to grow. Well, there's so many other people that just need the support to get themselves where you are right now. And you just so beautifully mentioned how that could look to partner together.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that, Jillian. That's very sweet of you to synthesize.
Yeah. And doing it alone sucks. So I,
Uh-huh.
I, I didn't realize the importance of community until I had one. And
I
that
know.
deep pain of loneliness and how much it led to deep, dark thoughts because I thought everything was just me and that I had to do everything myself. So
Hmm.
we're,
Amen. Amen.
yeah,
Absolutely. I think that people always ask, about coaching, and I say, like, coaching found me in the pandemic, changed
yeah.
pretty much everything for me, like in a few short months. But also, like, I don't think I would have had the same transformation experience if I didn't have it. It was like a group container coaching. And I feel like
Yeah.
that community was 80-90% of it, right? Like
Yeah.
just showing up and knowing I could rely on people, and um, that we were all going through some iteration of similar struggles was like
Mhm.
so healing.
Yeah, which goes into the second thing you said people were reflecting on was the relationships
Yeah.
that, I definitely feel a lot of us try, when people that your point 7 is still probably more than a full-time job for many,
Yeah.
right? And the efforts that it takes to get there and the level of negotiation and self-sacrifice that leads us to feel I can't be good at being a physician and a mom and a this and a that
Hmm.
and feeling like I feel like that alone because we have our identities and our careers so much can lead us to then neglect the relationships and to demonstrate what you did was I prioritized my kids. I'm moving to point 7.
Hmm.
That alone is something I find to be a really tough commitment and skill for people to lean into because it
Hmm.
just you can tell me more. I personally don't have children, but what I hear a lot from the mothers is like, I feel like I can't be a good physician or a mother. And I just feel like it just becomes this really negative self reflection that they have about themselves. Can you
Right.
share a little bit more about your experience about how you navigate that?
No, I totally agree. I think when I was at my worst point in like burnout was, the my second year as an attending in 2020, in the pandemic, and young children that were getting out of like schools and daycares were closing, right? And so it was like a daily struggle at that point to feel, well, I did not feel adequate in any way wherever I was, right? It was like if I'm at the hospital, I'm needed at home. they're struggling, like my husband is struggling, everyone is struggling, behaviorally, and just all the things that make you feel more guilt, and uncertainty, and really like question what you're doing. And then when you're at home and you feel like you had to, I mean, even still comes up, right? If your kid is sick, or you have to call out, it's always like
Mhm.
a worry about how it's going to affect your partners or your patients, or like just kind of letting people down. So I
Yeah.
think that that is 100% understandable and valid. And I don't think there's a lot of support for physician moms, right? Just in our system. And it's like you're trying to build a family, if that's an important thing to people, at the same time as they're trying to like build their career. Like fertility years coincide with like early career positions,
Yeah.
right? So I think that that is, I mean, we just have so much room to grow as a system and as like a culture, really, to support them better and to help make it feel like more possible and more doable. But I think what I found for myself is like so much of it has been redefining for myself, like what makes a good mom, what makes a good doctor, and
Mm.
how do I focus my energy on that, because your attention when it's divided is more like scattered and it's not as good quality, right? And so I found like intentionality with one-on-one times for kids, even 15 minutes, like once a week for a kid, like playing that game or doing that Lego thing they like. I mean, they all have different things they like. So it's like
Yeah.
a matter of meeting them where they are and doing something with them that they want to do, not like what I think we should do, or,
Mhm. Yeah.
has been really helpful. Um, and then I think, I want to say another big thing is just then noticing when comparison comes up, right? So
Yeah.
it's so easy to compare yourself to other physicians and what they're doing and feel like you're not doing enough because of that.
Mhm.
Um, Same way it is to compare yourself to other moms and maybe who aren't physicians or you think are doing a better job at like navigating it or something. It's so easy
Yeah.
to like, oh, well, they're going to the field trip. They're a room mom. They're like dropping their kid off, and I'm here. I'm on call. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's all. I think it's a lot about like redefining for yourself, like not looking to others for that sense of meaning and um, definition of like if what you're doing is enough,
Yeah.
because there's only one of you.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
know.
Yep. And it's definitely not a personal inadequacy. It's definitely a lot of social constructs, a lot of social
Hmm.
messages that get into our mind and focusing on the gaps, right? You just
Hmm.
said, when I'm with my kid, I can focus on that 15 minutes and be intentional. And oftentimes, when say you're with the patient and you're thinking, well, I'm not spending that 15 minutes with my child, or you're with the child and you're thinking, well, I'm not there with the patient who might, you're do hospice and palliative care. That might, be the patient in hospice. And I don't know if they're going to be there when I get to work tomorrow. And I was just listening to a physician really focusing in on like what she is doing, right? Like what,
Hmm.
and how that can change. Like these are the things that I am doing right now. These are the things that I'm doing that align with my values. And like
Right.
you said, like we could always focus on, hey, I don't have kids. I do think about this actually, because
Yeah.
when I get caught in comparison, it looks like, I'm turning 36. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I've pivoted my career multifold times. I'm
Uh-huh.
not where I could have been had it been linear, but I'm like, it's like I could always create gaps and like make myself miserable. And some days I do. But
Mhm. Mhm.
but
Mhm.
catching what you said, being intentional about catching it. This is where I think working with a friend, therapist, coach, where like they just catch where your mind is
Yeah,
continues to go, is like
yeah,
you don't need to increase your own suffering. There's enough suffering in the world.
sure is. Sure is. And it's like, it's like you can know something and learn it. Like you don't have to be at all the things to all the people, or even like it's impossible. And you can like totally be like, yes, that's right, and feel like so much relief, so much whatever. And then it's like a few weeks later or a few days later, a few
Mhm.
hours later, you're like, well, I wish I was enough. Right?
Yes, that is so relatable.
Yes.
Some mornings I wake up, I'm like, "Oh, it's a good day," and then by, like, 2 hours later, I'm like, "I'm a worthless piece of poo." Like,
Right?
"What is wrong with me?" That
Yes.
is so that is the human brain doing its thing, right?
Yes. Totally.
Oh my god.
Totally.
That really goes in well with what we were saying we were gonna promise people, we're gonna bring in art to discussion, which is really being intentional throughout the day, bringing in some mindfulness and some stress relief. Can you share a little bit more about how you integrate that into your day?
Yeah. So I'd say one of my favorite coaches who taught me this kind of planning your week based on, she calls it energetic time management. Her name is Heather Chauvin. She's amazing. She has a podcast called Emotionally Uncomfortable. So I
Interesting,
feel,
we're gonna
I
write
feel like
this
everyone needs to
down.
listen, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, she's amazing. And that process I find to be an iteration of that, something that I do like almost every week. And it really helps to frame the week and also like the day to day. So it's, I guess the main points of it are like you have like buckets of your life, right? That are your priorities or sometimes like what you have to do. And you kind of rate yourself, rate how you're doing and how you're feeling in each of those. So it's like marriage, work, business, parenting, and and self, and yourself always has to be number one.
Mm.
Which is like countercultural, right?
Yeah, we might have to repeat that. Yeah.
I know, I know.
Yourself has to be number 1, and I wanna know what comes up for people when they're just hearing that. Yourself has to be number 1. What comes up for you?
Yeah, right, right. She's like, so you pick three that you want to focus on. But really, it's like you're only picking two for the week because the one is always yourself.
Mm.
Um, and then it,
I'm, like, rejecting it as you're saying, like, "No,
I
it
know,
can't be.
I know.
No,
You're like,
that's
no, no, we gotta
selfish."
yeah,
Right, okay, it's
yeah,
not selfish. If you're rejecting it, take a moment to breathe and see if you can absorb. Yourself
right,
needs to be number 1. Okay, okay.
right. And then it's all focused too on like how you want to feel. And that can be kind of overarching, identifying like for yourself some of, she calls them like core desired feelings. So like I want to feel energized, I want to feel alive, I want to feel aligned, I want to feel connected. Like those are like ones I often go to. And so then you're designing your focuses, like the areas you focus on with those feeling words behind them. And then you're kind of putting your top few things that you feel like are going to move the needle the most in that area to help you um, get into that state more often. And it sounds like, I don't know, as I'm saying it and explaining it, it sounds like it's going to be, you're going to get nothing done on your to-do list because you're going to be like focused on these, I don't know how you want to feel things. But I'm telling you, it is magical in kind of taking really big, overwhelming schedules and making them seem doable because you're creating capacity by the things that you're choosing to focus on.
Mhm.
And I think it's like where our focus goes, our attention goes, or whatever, right?
Yeah,
And
where our focus goes, our energy
attention
flows.
flows. But right,
Yeah.
yeah. And so those are like little habits. And I think like everyone can, I don't subscribe to anyone saying like this is the morning routine you need, or you need to do X, Y, or Z each day, sometime in the day. I truly think it's like an evolving fluid process for each person as well as each season for them. So like what
Mm,
worked for me in the winter might need to be changed up in the summer, or whatever season you're in,
yeah.
whatever's going on. But yeah, like you kind of figure out your highest return on investment little micro habits for yourself. Um, and then also, what creates those feelings in other areas of your life, whether it's like relationships or work or whatever. And then you just focus on those and you kind of check in with yourself day to day, but also like there's a lot of room for iteration and like changing it up based on like if you look at it more like an experiment rather than like, all right, I'm locked into this morning routine forever.
Yeah, with
Whatever,
4 kids, I feel like it would really be hard to not be flexible. I feel like it would this is my perception. My sister has 4 kids, so I'm
Mhm,
leveraging my observations is that like if so I used to have a really hard time with like mental rigidity where
mhm,
I had to have it was really hard for me to break my schedule or if someone interrupted my plans or something. And this is work through this, y'all. Okay. So, but I just remember how stressful that was
yeah,
because, it's hard for me to think about now because I'm like, in the past 3 years, I've been in a work environment that requires flexibility. It has been a savior for my mind, body, and soul to
yeah,
teach me that skill because I'm like,
yes,
wow, you can be fluid. And fluid doesn't mean set, like, if you have the one thing I'd caution people is if you were to set boundaries for yourself and say, this is my time, don't let those things be flexible because oftentimes people are like, I can constantly move that. And they're shifting. Remember, you're number one. You're
yes,
number one.
every week.
You're number one. Just be mindful in your flexibility. Don't make that mean soft boundaries and not upholding what is true to what you need.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's so important. And I'm glad that I mean, it probably hasn't always been fun, but I'm glad that you're in an environment where it's like giving you lots of practice, right? Lots of
Yeah.
opportunities to practice that more flexible
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now I expect it to be. I actually just learned to adapt to it was predictably changing. Like it was predictably not going to be what I would have laid out as the plan. And I just
Yeah.
knew the plan is going to shift. If the plan stayed the same, I was more
Then
like
it feels bad. It
destabilizing
feels
because I was
odd.
like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
But I mean, it all worked out, right? It just showed me what your patient said, the third thing you said is like not taking things too seriously and having joy. I would take things so seriously that if like I had a meeting and it got canceled, I could have taken it so personally, be like, well, that like if it's a one-on-one, for example, and
Mhm.
with somebody that was supposed to meet with you and a mentor or something, and they cancel, like, oh my God, they don't want to hang out with me. I'm so stupid. I'm incompetent. They don't value like
Yeah.
whatever, right? It could be whatever
Yeah.
you make up in your brain. And I'm like, well, they're busy. And of course things change. And I mean, a lot of people have families and that gets in the way. And it's like, okay, whatever, we'll reschedule.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah,
And
it's
then
like, yeah, what do we make it mean?
totally. And I was gonna say, I bet each time that that happened and you like figured out that you were okay, right? Like it was okay, things are still together. It like is like evidence for like your nervous system and your body, like just
Mhm.
yourself to be like, hey, like I made it through another like thing that got switched on me. That's I'm building my evidence for that being okay, and I can like get
Yeah.
through it to the other side. So
It
like
did.
maybe
Yeah.
it's resilience. I don't know,
It
personal
did.
resilience.
And it taught me too, well, how is this impacting me and how do when I was younger, I had really, a lot of anxiety, like social anxiety, and some I might cancel plans in the last minute. And then I changed that because I'm like, oh, that's showing the person I don't respect them. Like in my mind, like I don't want to cancel plans. So I'm late to commit because if I commit, I'm gonna show up unless there's something that like
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
So what the lesson taught me too, for people who are listening, and I don't encourage people to constantly accept the behaviors where people are constantly canceling plans on you. So if it's a behavior you're noticing, I recognize that I had to shift my perceived relationship with that person
Mhm.
because I currently wasn't at the same value. Like I value that meeting really, really high, but if it was
Sure.
constantly being canceled on me, well, it's not the same priority to that person, and I had to accept that.
Yeah.
And then I had to know how I feel. And so we're here today. We made a commitment, right? And what I have learned from the pain I felt was like if I make a commitment to someone and how I know it is to be a guest and a receiver of that meeting, I'm going to show up and show them that I care and that I value their time and I'm happy to be here together
Mhm.
because it showed me where my values were when all those meetings would get canceled. And some of them I was happy they got canceled, but I mean, it's just it really helps if you reflect like how do I feel? What is that showing me? How is that informing how I want to show up for others? And also not making it personal where like I'm going to have meetings that I have to cancel and I hope people have grace for me. I'm going to have grace for them. If it becomes a pattern, then you start to do something.
Right, right, absolutely. I think that's beautifully said. I think it's the same long line as like what we talk about in coaching, the manuals for other people versus like your own manuals, right? And they're always operating, even though
Mhm.
we make a lot of assumptions about other people manuals and how they should be operating. So and it creates a lot of like tension in
Mhm.
relationships, right?
Yep. Yep. We can't control anyone else.
No, no.
Nope. I really like this exercise that has like circles of control is like yours. And then
Hmm.
the second one is circle of influence. So circle of control, circle of influence, and then what you can't control. So if
Hmm.
you ever find yourself super anxious, I did put a video on my channel about it because I really like the exercise.
I think that sounds great.
Yeah, it's like if you have a thought and you're noticing you're so anxious, okay, we'll take the thought, dissect it down. What's in your control? What can
Hmm.
you influence? Like the things that are probably in your clinic that you can optimize and support the people who are then supporting you. Then what aspects are not in your control and let that go.
Yeah, and just having that like delineation is probably really helpful to see it, right?
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
so.
I think so too.
Yeah. Well, it was really fun to discuss some of that. I take people on tangents, so we'll circle back to what I did ask you, which
Yeah.
was the integration of just that mindfulness. You talked about spending that 15 minutes with your kid and being very intentional when you are with them. Anything else
Hmm.
you like to add?
For mindfulness, I mean, the more I like focus on this, the more I find it's critical for me, at least, to do some component of not just checking in with my mind and like being mentally present, right? But like I have to connect it to my body or else it's not the same level.
Mm,
Um, so I have to do something that like gets my mind talking to my body, which can be like sensory grounding is something I do a lot, right? And just like notice it sounds really, really simple, but it's like noticing how like I pick purple as my color. And that's I like to look around and find little things that are purple, like in the room. Just something that literally is like bringing me here, you know?
Yeah.
Or if I tend to be more on the activated side rather than like the withdrawn side.
Mhm.
And so, but that energy like makes it difficult for me to be present all the time, right? And so I have to do whether it's like a very, very quick like power walk or I do like somatic like shaking or
Yeah.
dancing or like
Nice. Yeah.
humming, something where I'm literally like
Mhm.
getting some of that activated energy, like moving it through. That will really help me to be present, particularly if I feel like my mind and my body feel buzzy and not like centered and grounded. So that applies in all areas, but I would say definitely more for things that you need focus on, right? Like things at work or with clients. And then certainly if you notice that your mind is like that with your family or like your relationships, right? It's also something that I think is a tool that I have enjoyed learning and using because I think I'm always surprised by the level of like difference that it makes when I remember to do them.
It's really ironic that you brought up the shaking because I go to a mind body skills it's on Mondays and we did the shaking this Monday. We hadn't done it ever before, so it's just really ironic that you brought it up. And one of my most recent I'm doing a mindfulness certification program for my own benefit, but sharing the practices on my YouTube channel.
That's
So
awesome.
you put your purple, and one of the ones I came across was a Color Your World guided meditation, which I have if people are interested in doing that exercise that you mentioned. It was really about identifying colors, then looking for objects that are in that same color.
Hmm.
It's like, wow. And then like even describing it, like having this green cup, for example, if people are just listening, they can't see it, but I have a green cup, but it's describing the tumbler that I have
Right.
without like knowing that it's a tumbler and just describing the object and the color. Oh my god, that I sometimes I think it can bring hyper awareness to us if we're people that have a lot going on in our mind and our body. So
Yes.
please pace yourself when if you're coming hyper aware and you're noticing that you might be overstimulated.
Right.
Yeah, I do love what you recommended doing that, trying to identify a color and observing that and doing your shaking, just
I
really
do.
letting that energy out.
Yes. It's very helpful. Like, I shake on the way to the bathroom a lot at work. It's not super obvious. I'll just be like might just look like a dance. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because people think often you have to sit for mindfulness, but when you have so much energy stored in your body, it's nice to move and let
Mhm,
that out. Yeah.
mhm. For sure. For sure. I like the concept of, like, meeting your body wherever it is, right? Your mind body, you can, like, think of them together, but
Mm.
they can be in different places sometimes. Um,
Sometimes. So
sometimes
are they sometimes in the same place?
okay, rarely, I don't
Okay,
know.
they're supposed to be in the same place. Noted. Okay.
Right, right.
Okay.
I know. But yeah, if you like meet yourself where you are, like with that level of either like low energy or high energy, you do a practice that's like meeting that. And then it
Yeah.
helps to kind of like bring you down on that ladder to a place
Yeah.
where you're more like present, grounded, connected to what's going on around you. And also really like connected with yourself. That's pretty
Yeah.
important. Your work is already kind of speaks to this very well and very comprehensively, but I think it's just another vote for the whole concept of like permission as a human. And when you do the work and take time to really understand yourself and your like truest desires more, I feel like the next step from that like awareness is really a process of giving yourself permission, not
Yeah.
just one time, but kind of on a regular or daily
Mhm.
basis, like
Yeah.
permission for yourself to matter, permission for you to, create the schedule that allows you to do what you care about. And like, mm, yeah, I think it's a lot about overcoming some of the resistance that we have to that, right?
Mm.
And so I think that it is a ongoing everyday practice to be like, I'm giving myself permission to do what matters to me today. And everything that comes with that, like you can learn tools to help you, process and help you to continue in that journey, doing the things you said you would do, for yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think that if you have that approach, you're gonna stay on a path that I feel like is true to you, right?
Mhm. Yeah, this channel, if you're watching on my YouTube channel, is called A Life True to You. And I would challenge people to ask themselves, what does that mean? A lot of times we've abandoned ourselves for so long, we don't know how to answer that, and it can feel overwhelming. And I think awareness of that overwhelm and just being with it,
Mhm.
saying, wow, I've abandoned myself for so long. It feels overwhelming to even ask myself the question, who am I? Or if you're like me, it might feel empty. When I first started asking that question, I was like, oh my God, like I feel so empty and I'm worthless and I'm not enough. And all those painful thoughts can arise. And that's where I think it's really important to have partners by your side in a community.
Yeah.
And when you were saying also demonstrating to yourself, giving yourself permission, if you put yourself onto your calendar and you set that boundary and you maintain it, then that's rewiring your brain to show I do matter, I do matter, I do matter. If
Mhm.
we structure our calendar and we put our time and it constantly gets bumped, that's another wiring of you don't matter enough, so I'm going to like move you, or parts of abandoning the needs that I said were important to me. And that's not always true if the value of what you're replacing it from is, another, sometimes we have competing values. Like I
Yeah.
value me and I value my kid's soccer game, or I
Right.
value me and my kid gets sick. So this isn't to say that, but if it's like, I'm going to move myself because I am going to people please and do something I don't actually want to do, that's
Mhm.
where I say, let's pause there
Totally.
and reconsider what it could look like to say no thanks, I have plans, even if it's I have plans with myself.
Right. It's okay. It
Yeah.
totally is. Yeah. Yeah, it's like all about having your own back and like you said, like showing up for yourself and doing what you told yourself you would do for yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's the easiest thing to be like, maybe not today. We'll do it tomorrow, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm. Sometimes for me, that just looks like honoring my need for sleep. And I'm like, I could do a lot. I'm a night owl by nature, right? And it's like somewhat I want to have that time after the kids are in bed and
Mhm.
stuff. But then I'm like, I do have a little time. And I've learned like consistently giving myself adequate sleep helps me like it pays off over and over and over. So like it's one of
Mm.
those things I still struggle with it though, but it's like a way of caring for myself that I keep needing to be reminded of, like to be consistent with because it helps.
I do hear that a lot with moms that say like that night, either that really late at night or the really early time in the morning is their time, and sometimes they sacrifice sleep. And of course, we'll just validate that you do need your time. And I know it often competes with sleep, and we are here to listen and to support and how you navigate which kind of, I don't want to say balance because that's like an overused word,
I
but
know.
which ratio really feels good. And like you said, you're going to have different seasons. And maybe today I stay up a little bit longer watching a certain show. People usually say it's their guilty pleasure. What do you like to do late at
Yeah.
night for yourself?
I'm a big reader, so like I'm
Mm,
always reading a couple of books, and at night I'm always into like the fiction and like the
yeah.
silly stories, but I get really like swept up in them. And then sometimes my husband and I would watch like comedy shows. That's like our other like way to unwind, you know. Nothing
Mm.
too serious. I can't watch like too serious of shows, so the rest of my day is serious.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I gotta have something very lighthearted. But I'll absolutely do that too.
Well, I'd love to hear what other people's guilty pleasures are. What comes up for them? I'm super curious. Please do share.
Yes.
You gave a really nice takeaway at the end here, but do you have any further takeaways you want to leave with the audience?
Um, hmm, I'd say just you never go wrong if you know and you're clear and you keep coming back to your biggest core values and like getting clear on how you want to feel. I feel like those two things together are you're on a path of good energy, right? To move yourself ahead and like you may still want or need support. I think that's something that we're all still learning.
Yeah.
That like community and support is okay, and it's actually like a normal human thing that we sometimes don't allow ourselves to have. But if you really are like focused and keep coming back to those values for yourself, as well as like getting clear on how you want to feel and knowing what brings you that feeling, like
Mm-hmm.
I think you can have a really fulfilling, more deeply meaningful life.
Yeah, and I know it's some people are going to be at stages of extraordinary burnout, and I just remembered that time, like to even try to consider that your brain may not offer you a lot,
Sure.
right? And
Sure.
just to hold space and you can I've oftentimes borrowed hope from others, so I will for sure lend hope. How about you?
Absolutely, absolutely. The hope that like it no matter how terrible it feels right now, like it won't feel like this forever. And there are so many different levers you can pull, right? And
Mhm.
experiment with to feel even 1% better and 1% more capable of like what life looks like and what it feels like. And just can be really heavy and really, really like overwhelming.
Yeah, so if you're feeling that right now, we hear you, we see you, we're supporting you. And I think one of the markers of recovering and allowing yourself to rest and do what you need to get out of that state is the capacity to then even consider, what are my core values? How do I want to feel? And if how you want to feel today is just not like this, that's
Not
acceptable,
this. Yeah,
right? Not
exactly.
not this. I don't know. And sometimes if our brains aren't offering ourselves hope again, we lent some to you.
Mhm.
And I know for in the recovery journey for my own experience and for what I've seen is when you get to this level of healing where you can start to dream and you can start to really feel what do I want to feel, and how do I want to sit with the full spectrum of emotions, and who
Mhm.
am I and what are my core values? Like, I want to celebrate that as a nice step into the path of healing and living a life like so well displayed, that's grounded on your core values, that's in your authentic truth, and one that I want to reiterate the three things that you said for the patients at the end of their life that they were reflecting on and regretting. And then the one when you said it was the inaction, the things that they didn't do. So if
Mhm.
you're here listening, think about the things you're holding yourself back from, and why,
Mhm.
and what's the next best step to overcome that. The second thing is relationships. And I would consider an invitation to think about someone who really matters and take a pause to reach out to them and let them know.
Mhm.
I think we often assume people know how much they matter. They may not. They might need to hear that and see how it impacts you to reach out to them.
Mhm.
And what would it look like to allow yourself to be happier? Give
Mhm.
yourself more opportunity to embrace joy. I know many of us, like you said, your work is serious. Do you have to balance it out? I realize many of us I get super serious actually. It's
Yeah.
one of our friends, Dr. Mary Renzel, just suggested that we all bring more play into our life.
Yes.
So I will also leave that with the audience. What would it look like to give yourself permission to introduce more play into your life?
Mhm. Mhm. That's awesome.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for being here. And
Thank you for
before
having me.
people sign off, they got to know how they can connect with you. So, what's the best way for them to get in touch
Oh
with you?
gosh. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. So just searching my name there. Or else my podcast, it comes out every Wednesday on Spotify or Apple, and it's again called Vibrant Humans. That's probably the best way to just hear. They're short episodes, they're like 15, 20 minutes on some topic related to personal growth and sort of the big picture stuff. So definitely feel free to check that out too.
I love it. I love it. 15 to 20 minutes is perfect. I know people are like, man, your episodes are long, but I hope you find them valuable,
I think
people.
they're very valuable. I'm sure that they are. I'm
I would
sure.
never want to have cut this conversation shorter.
No, no, it was awesome to talk with you, and you have so much wisdom to share. You really do.
Likewise, Sarah. And I'm looking forward to supporting you and connecting you with the people who you definitely will serve well as a coach. The business side of things, any position that's here use like, yeah, the business side sucks. Just like allow that to suck for a while as you embrace that you have so much value to offer people. And I think because the physician role takes so much identity, also coach can too, right? I am a coach. That can be hard for many of us to embody and embrace,
Mhm.
but I can guarantee that everything that you shared with me today makes you a tremendous coach. You are more than qualified, and you will be an asset to whoever gets to partner with you.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you.
And for
Thanks
our
for listening.
listeners, yes, any questions, reflections, or insights, please share them down below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for being here.